The price of silver has been controlled and kept too low for too long, and it has distorted the real supply-demand fundamentals. It's created a global physical shortage. But if you were just looking at the price, you'd say, I don't believe that. That's not true. Look at the price. India in 2021 imported 4,500 tons. This year, they are approaching 8,000 tons of silver. That's a 78% increase. Their expectations are to import over 300 million ounces. Well, why isn't the price going to the moon? It is because of the distortions and the misdirection that has been created by suppressing the paper price, because it means a whole lot more to see gold and silver accentuate. They are the canary in the mine shaft against the Western system. But what is betraying, Mario, what is betraying the price? And well, gold, why isn't gold going up? Why isn't gold going up in the midst of 40-year high inflation and all of this? Well, this is exactly the point. We are seeing a betrayal of the rhetoric and of the price action by the biggest money in the world, drawing down the physical supplies from the top on down. When you see silver on the London Metals Exchange at the lowest level in inventories they've ever had since they started keeping records on a 140-year-old exchange, that says something to me. So the world, the big money, is using the misdirection of price and rhetoric to reposition. When you see the massive amount of gold acquisition by the central banks of the world, when you see 400 metric tons of gold delivered out of the West in the third quarter, nearly double the biggest quarterly accumulation by the banks ever, just almost double. When you see it approaching over 700 tons delivered for the year, which we haven't seen that much delivered to the central banks since 1967. So what we're seeing is the biggest money in the world is taking advantage of price and rhetoric to de-dollarize, to accumulate copious amounts of precious metals. And from the top on down, from the LME, from the COMEX, backdooring out of the ETFs, this to me betrays everything, betrays the rhetoric, betrays the price. Now, how does that affect here in the West? For the past 3 years, getting product has been next to impossible. It has been the single biggest challenge of my career, where it used to be a no-brainer, and for the last 3 years, it's become incredibly difficult. The only thing that I could say about that, Mario, is that at least in terms of retail physical premium here in the US. Now, I don't know how it is where you are. We've talked about this before, where premiums were through the roof, and they have been for 3 years. The only thing that makes sense to me is that this year, this holiday season, this happened almost straight up with about a week before Thanksgiving, everything collapsed. Across the whole industry, demand just fell. And that's with gold and silver having a really great, run recently. So basically what has happened as the business has slowed down this year, as it has allowed people to catch up, and the new allocations have come out, we've seen, in my opinion, the best premium, the best opportunity to buy metals that I've seen really since February 2020. Now, is this going to stick? I don't think so. I think this is a sweet spot. When I look at the big inventories on the large wholesalers, there is product available, but all of it says limited, 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 limited. Some of it says sold out already. Most of the third quarter, everything was sold out. Premiums were through the roof. They've come down a lot. And I would suspect it would take one event, some event, whatever that may be, and we go right back to not being able to get product again. Because remember, 0.5% allocation. And for the last 3 years, it's been nearly impossible. What happens if that becomes 5%? Just a 5% allocation. That's a tenfold increase in demand. It's over. Won't happen. And I've been out there saying for the last 2 years that the market will ultimately identify itself by the inability for most of us to source product. And that the biggest reason I say that is that the elephant hasn't woken up yet. In the past 4 weeks, premiums have been halved and nothing has changed. So do I see this being a long-term trend? Absolutely not. But I honest to God believe it is the best time to buy metal, period, that I have seen in almost 3 years. I haven't seen anyone sell anything. You would think, I think the people the traders, they may be buying and selling GLD or SLD or PHYS or PSLV, any of these ETFs that allow them to go in and out. But people selling physical metal represents a very small portion of our business, maybe less than 1%, because the higher the price goes in this environment only reinforces people's skepticism of the system, only reinforces their concern of what's happening and what's coming. And so to go back into fiat is really counter to what most people are thinking in the physical world. I know you haven't sold, I don't know this, but I'm guessing you haven't sold any of your silver just because the price went up. In fact, if I called my clients and said silver's at 40 bucks, you should sell right now, they'd laugh at me. Most of them, for whatever reason, demand fell off in November. I really, honest to God, believe it has to do with people just unwinding. And if you think about the stress that has been on all of us for the last 2.5 years in every way, even little things like going to a grocery store, and for a good part of the last 2 years, the stress that we've all learned to live with, and to see that kind of evaporate into the ether, I think people have just got out and unplugged and traveled and been with family and shut off their computer screen. Does that have a profound effect? Well, I'll tell you this, in the United States it has. I'm friends with many of the owners of precious metals companies and the big wholesalers, and they're all saying the same thing. It's like someone absolutely turned off the switch. It's weird how it can happen that way in this market. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that people's mental health is more important than anything. And this, for me anyway, this holiday season has been a respite. And I think my mind is in a better place as a result of it. If people don't get this, if they're not contrarians, they're going to be a victim when this happens. And so owning precious metals, it's wealth. If you own enough of it, you'll be wealthy, but you don't buy it to get wealthy. You buy it because of what is happening over there. They're all joining together. And by the way, they are the countries that are accumulating all of the gold. I wanted to bring up one thing that I find really, really interesting. The countries that have either joined BRICS or are on the list of those to join shortly, they have expressed interest in joining BRICS. It's very interesting when you take a look at the amount of gold that they own as a percentage of their reserves. Check this out. Venezuela, 82%. Uzbekistan, 65%, Kazakhstan, 63%, Bolivia, 55%, Belarus, 40%, Turkey, 29%, Pakistan, 29%. All of these countries are loading up on gold, and they represent a minimum of 22% of their reserves, some of them as high as 80%. What does that tell you? It tells you all of these countries are breaking away from the West, and they are using something stable like gold